Shalom and welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast. And today, I think we sang that song before, but it's time to do it again. Dun, 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 dun. Another one bites the dust. Anyway, we're talking about all the elimination in the Hamas leadership in the Gaza Strip.
Yair and I have been rehearsing for weeks.
we're synced to the max. I'm so happy that we have these like amazing microphones so you can hear us singing our...
So I'll tell you what, since we have headphones, I distinctly like this podcast less.
You do? I actually like it more.
Because I have to listen to myself all the
time. Yeah, definitely, guys. So this is everything that's happening now in the Gaza Strip. Just in the past week, the IDF eliminated actually 2 prime ministers of the Hamas terrorist organizations.
I feel like they use that terminology quite loosely, though.
Right?
Let's call it leaders of Hamas.
Yeah. I think they just gave him a title and said, okay, whoever gets this title is getting also, a huge
You're the
target.
prime minister. He says, well, I want to be the king. Then you're the king, too.
Yeah, a king of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Okay. And then they don't last for so long. I think this is also the new strategy in this region in targeting these terrorists. If you're talking about the strategy that the United States is using against the Houthis in Yemen, it's pretty similar. Targeting the heads of the organization, that creates trouble and disorder within the ranks of the organization. It also frightens new people from jumping the ranks, and in general, it's very hard to find good leadership and good management.
Exactly. So today we're breaking down this topic, which is targeted assassinations, something Israel and many, many countries have been using for a long time. I should say countries that choose not to use indiscriminate fire use targeted assassinations to remove their enemies.
Yeah.
We've done that in the past. We're doing it once more with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But wait, before we stop, look at me, I'm so well trained.
Yeah.
Before we stop, if you're watching this at home, do us all a favor, and me specifically, pause the video for just a second and press the like, the share, and the subscribe. And if you're on YouTube and you're watching this, then do one more thing. There's that little bell icon next to the subscribe button. Press that too so you never miss another video. About half of our viewers subscribe to the content on a regular basis, but more than half of the people that watch are not subscribers. We need that number to change. We need it higher. It helps us get to more people with the truth from what happens in Israel. So make sure to do that. And now we can go back to talking about dropping munitions from the air to remove our enemies.
Yes, definitely.
Or blowing beepers.
Yeah, especially the bad guys in the Gaza Strip. Okay, so let's break down the new offensive, this new round of fighting against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. We had a ceasefire of 59 days. It collapsed because we could not reach any understandings to release more hostages against Hamas. Basically, the gaps were too wide. Yeah. Hamas refused to give up their arms. They refused to give up the hostages, and they basically demanded that the IDF will withdraw its forces and declare that the war has ended without receiving our hostages back to Israel. Okay, yeah. I think it's pretty harsh demands, and Israel could not accept these demands, and that's why we launched a surprise aerial attack targeting at least 400 of Hamas's leadership, and we're talking about mid-range leaders up to brigade leaders of Hamas in less than 10 minutes. Okay, and only a few days afterwards, Israel carried out another strike that is very symbolic but also helps in a practical way. We targeted 100 pickup trucks. Mati, do you remember these pickup trucks from October 7? The images of
the infamous pickup trucks.
Yeah, since then I'm afraid to see white pickup trucks in the streets.
Yeah, so let's contextualize this for people because it seems like it's coming out of the blue.
Yeah.
And the reality is that during the ceasefire, Hamas, which is, let's remember, a terrorist organization.
It's important to remind people around the world.
They're not a government that went back to building kindergartens.
And they're not a humanitarian organization like they're projected in U.S. campuses.
Exactly. Far from it. What they did from day one of the ceasefire all the way till let's call it the fighting started again, is they were busy doing only one thing. And that thing is loading up vehicles and houses and outposts with more weapons, is moving fighters and weapons, is recruiting teenagers to fight and kill themselves on behalf of their terrorist regime.
Yes.
And at the same time, they went back to firing rockets at Israel on several occasions, and they were stopped from doing so on multiple occasions, even during the ceasefire.
And you forgot to mention that they were stealing all the humanitarian aid
Yes.
that was shipped into the Gaza Strip and then selling it to the Palestinian people.
At a premium price.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
at a price that is probably 10 times what you pay in a supermarket.
Yeah.
So this is Hamas during the ceasefire and before it, of course. They were busy at making sure that life is as miserable as it possibly could be for the people in the Gaza Strip, and they were busy getting ready to go back to war. So I want to frame this conversation. People say, oh, why is Israel so aggressive in its behavior towards Hamas? Come on, guys. Hamas were prepping for an attack the moment the ceasefire would end. So since the ceasefire was over, we preemptively struck.
Yeah.
We did nothing wrong, and they were preparing to do exactly the same thing.
No, exactly. And Mati, if like you lived in Switzerland and the country next door to you, I don't know which country is next door, Finland? I don't remember the geography.
France, Germany, Italy.
France would invade you and, destroy your community.
That's a bad example. Germany would invade you.
Okay.
More likely.
It happened. Okay, and then kidnapped your people. Wouldn't you want your government, Switzerland, to launch an attack against these terrorists?
No, heaven forbid
and take your countrymen back home?
On the contrary, it would forbid my people from calling the terrorists because that's not nice.
And you would allow, aid shipments to go into that country that invaded you, right?
And I would expect other people to send more weapons so they could better fight against me.
Exactly.
I'm, of course, joking if you can't see this on video.
Yeah, this is being Switzerland. But this is the reality in the world now. This is what the international community is expecting Israel to do nothing, provide food to the terrorist entity called Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and not fight to return our hostages back home. And they expect us to live side by side with them as they keep launching rockets at us and threatening to destroy Israel.
We live in the age of fake news.
Yeah.
And countries are no exception to that rule. We've seen the Houthis and the Turks specifically recently repeatedly say, there is no problem in the Middle East. If only Israel would cease its occupation of the Gaza Strip,
everything will be good.
Everything would go back to usual. As if October 7th never happened. As if Hamas didn't attack Israel. As if there weren't hostages, and there are hostages within the Gaza Strip. They repeatedly claim, guys, just stop the hostilities against Hamas in Gaza. Mm-hmm. That's all we're asking. That's it. And the same voices were the same voices that in past years said, all we need for peace in the Middle East is for Israel to leave Al-Aqsa, which is the Temple Mount alone.
Yeah, exactly.
This
little mountain
this Temple Mount that is, by the way, controlled by a foreign entity and not by the Israeli government, by the Jordanian Waqf, which is like the forces that control the holy sites in Islam. Again, it's just this repetitive, deceitful narrative that people are trying to shape. So I feel like it moves me, it triggers me emotionally, because people just say these lies about what we're trying to do. Anyway, so we're back at it.
We have Trump and we have the new administration and we have support and we're coming back to fight. I think
we got the big bombs, we got the support, we got the D9s, we got the best to do in order to basically take out Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
But we didn't start to fight yet.
Only airstrikes, yeah.
So let's talk about this. One, I think we need to explain the premise of why we're doing targeted assassinations.
Yeah.
And the idea behind this is if you're a non-democracy who indiscriminately kills people, you don't bother with targeted assassinations. You know what you do? You send a surface-to-air missile and you knock out a commercial flight to kill a journalist. Yeah. This happened recently. It wasn't Israel who did it. Okay, we know what we're talking about?
No, I don't remember.
I'll show you. I'll show you the link later. We're not trying to start a world war. But think about it this way: if you're a non-democracy and you have someone who's a political adversary of yours, you imprison them or kill everyone that's related to them. Israel and the U.S. does this to a certain degree in other countries. We don't. If we want to kill one terrorist who is the master evil, mind behind a never-ending wave of terrorism and incitement to violence, and et cetera, we don't carpet bomb their neighborhood.
Yes, exactly.
What do? We try to get just that person. And this is the policy our government has been enacting for a very long time. We oftentimes cancel and we abort these missions if there's a chance of women and children being around.
Correct.
And go to extreme lengths to only allow it to be carried out against combatants, as in men who are terrorists.
Yeah.
So the chief terrorist and his allies. And the people we're killing in the Gaza Strip right now, these people, even though they carry civilian titles, Hamas is not a civil government. Hamas is a terrorist organization.
Yeah, it just controls every aspect of life in the Gaza Strip,
Yeah.
from the health ministry to the education system, to the work ministry, to the finance ministry. Everything is controlled by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. So you cannot
Absolutely.
separate the civil administration of Hamas from Hamas's terrorist organization.
Yes.
Everything is feeding into this hatred against Israel. And Mati, finally, we are seeing the Palestinian people protesting against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. I mean, that was like one
Second
of the,
time.
Well, twice in a row, but finally it happens, so
In the beginning of the war, they were demonstrating and Hamas shot most of the people. And again, when they demonstrate, Hamas came again yesterday to the places of the demonstration, start to shoot the people with live bullets.
Yeah, and I mean, think about this from the perspective of the people in the Gaza Strip. They've lost everything, many of them, because of Hamas actions. They've been at war repeatedly because of Hamas actions. They've seen military operation after operation come to their neighborhoods because of Hamas actions, and to free Israeli hostages that are held forcefully within their neighborhoods, and to eliminate bombs that are planted inside their schools and kindergartens. They are, as much as anyone could be, hostages of a terrorist organization. Now, some of them support the terrorist organization.
Yes.
That still doesn't change the fact that they don't have much of a decision in the matter.
plus it also, I think, proves now that Hamas is at a very weak position, so that, so many people are, having the guts to go to the middle of the street and protest against Hamas on broad daylight. Because in the past, it wouldn't happen because they would all be shut down or executed or just being, afraid because of all the military presence of Hamas. But now all the militants are hiding under tunnels because we started the war again.
Yeah, Hamas is evil. There's no two ways about it. And the people that live in the Gaza Strip, the inhabitants of that area, know that, and they resent them for it, and they resent them for the destruction that they brought, and the financial collapse, and the loss of opportunity, and the lack of a future that is in any way like possible for them, that isn't destructive, and they rightly are against it. And Hamas is a violent organization. They kill people that demonstrate against them.
Yeah.
They disappear their families when people demonstrate against them. They take retribution against an entire clan when someone dares to speak against Hamas and its actions. And people rightfully look at this and say, why are we trying to repeat the pattern again? Haven't you had enough? And you remember we were talking about this the other week. There was the foreign minister in Iraq?
Yes, yes, you told me that he was in front of the camera stating, "We do not want you, Iran. We do not want your ideology. Get out of our country."
Exactly. So this guy, and this is the same sentiment. People look at what's happened to the people of Gaza, and they don't say, "Oh, Israel is the aggressor here." They say, "You did this to yourself. You brought this on yourself. We don't want the same, future for our people. Leave us alone." The people of Gaza rightly are demonstrating against it. And the Israeli army and government, I guess by extension, are looking at this situation where we don't have a ceasefire agreement. We have nothing in the pipeline that's going to release the hostages anytime soon.
Yeah.
Despite incredible efforts invested by the American government and the Israeli negotiations and the Qataris and the Egyptians,
exactly.
And even discussions that happened between the Americans and the Hamas directly, still there is nothing. And Hamas is full speed, full throttle, going back towards war.
Yes.
And what do we do in response? We say, well, we don't want to once again conquer the Gaza Strip. So we're doing very limited ground operations and eliminating their leadership. And who are we eliminating? Time and time again, we're leading the tactical level leadership of Hamas, the battalion commanders, the regiment commanders, the people that are sitting on the what we would call the on-off button for finances, for decision making. Again, these are not civil servants that are there, trying to distribute goods. They're mega terrorists that are trying to destroy the future of their people.
Yes,
and our government says, rightly so, why would we allow these people to continue walking on the face of the earth?
Yeah, it's important to share with everybody that as the IDF is conducting its operations in the Gaza Strip, we make sure that the civilian population knows before a strike on a building. How we do that? First of all, with leaflets from the sky. Second of all, we have a specific IDF spokesperson in Arabic that all he does is talking to the Palestinian civilian population. If he does it on the X platform and other social media platforms, to make sure that they get the message, that they know that just last week, for example, 3 missiles were launched at Israel from a certain neighborhood in northern Gaza. So he said, terrorists launched again missiles at Israel from this neighborhood. The IDF will conduct strikes to destroy these terrorist threats, and you should remove yourself from the vicinity of the terrorists. And this is something that is repeatedly happening. Okay? I don't know many countries that let their enemies know before they conduct a strike in order to protect the civilian population. But this is something that Israel has been doing and is doing currently. And another example to the precise assassinations and the capabilities of Israel is the termination of Nat Yahya Sinwar, Ismail Haniyeh, the leader, the political hero.
In Iran.
In Iran. In an
IRGC facility protected by the IRGC itself.
Exactly. And how did the assassination happen? A bomb was planted under his bed in his room, targeting only that room, not causing damage to anything else.
Or somebody in the windows in front of that shot a missile. Or a small vehicle, small drone.
We don't know exactly.
But bottom line, it was precise to his room.
Yeah.
And except for maybe his bodyguard, nobody else who got hurt.
Yeah, and the intelligence on it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think this all raises a really big question of like, how effective is this? And you look at, I'm trying to run through my head the number of people that have been removed. You have, the heads of every terrorist organization in our region have, aside from the head of the Houthi movement.
He's hiding.
He was in hiding.
Well, also Nasrallah hid.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we successfully eliminated Nasrallah and his entire chain of command, and we successfully eliminated both what they called the diplomatic and the military leaders. Both Sinwar and Haniyeh of Hamas were eliminated.
Sinwar, the brother, not the other brother.
Yeah, the one who's no longer with us. So we eliminated them and many other commanders in Hamas. And we did so effectively. We still have the leadership of the Houthi movement, still the Iranian government are in place. And historically, Israel's done this several times, including, by the way, the Hassan Nasrallah's predecessor. And at the time, it's always thought that this is the best course of action because it will weaken the organization. Sometimes it works very, very well, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's an important thing to put on the table.
More fanatic people coming.
You never know. Hassan Nasrallah was expected to be a weak leader. And his predecessor was the founder of Hezbollah movement, and he was, by all accords, this is before my time, a little lazier and more enjoying life than Hassan Nasrallah was. And we got Hassan Nasrallah for a lifetime, and it took a very, very brave moment on our end to remove him. Yeah. And the same applies to others that are being removed. You never know who's coming next. And I want to say this: Hamas is not depleted of negative leadership. We've just released a very long list of terrible terrorists back into the West Bank, into the Gaza Strip, into Turkey. These people,
the Egyptians send them away.
Yeah, but some of these people are terrible, just the worst type of humans that are imaginable. Many of them are the masterminds behind many terrorist attacks. So the people that are the organizers and the sort of like the spirit behind like the fighters or the terrorists in their organization. A lot of these are back on the ground. So you remove the leadership, you're not guaranteed that you're disconnecting the organization.
Yeah, but it creates, disorder, and it destroys the chain of command, the way for them to conduct more operations and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'd say there are exceptions to this rule. An example, I think a positive example of assassination that was very effective was Qasem Soleimani. Qasem Soleimani was like the legendary leader of the IRGC, which is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. President Trump. President Trump in his previous term. I had to run the images through my head. Because Obama was Bin Laden.
Yes.
Yeah. So Trump in his previous term orders the execution of Qasem Soleimani, who's killed in Iraq, not in Iran, by an American drone.
Yeah.
Crazy scene where he comes out of the plane, gets in the car, and the car's blown to pieces. This man and the two Iranians, the Iranian government admits it took them more than 3 years to close the gap after his death.
Yes.
So very effective assassination in that case of someone who was a spiritual and political leader for a terrorist organization. By the way, again, we keep going back to the numbers. The IRGC has a bigger budget than most Western countries' military budget. This isn't some small terrorist organization that like sells cocaine or, you know, or some kind of drugs to fund themselves. They have a budget of upwards of $30 billion a year.
Yeah.
That's how big they are as an organization.
No, their funding includes actually selling Captagon and other drugs. It includes
oil,
you know,
oil sales.
Oil, cryptocurrency, and other mechanisms to gain money, trafficking, human trafficking, and other stuff like that. Basically, all the good stuff that the world has to offer.
On a complete side note, I find it very amusing that oftentimes the way the North Koreans, another regime led by a terrible dictator, the way they fund their operations is they steal money from other countries by hacking operations.
Really?
Yeah.
What, hacking the banking system?
They recently stole, what was the number? It was like 800 million, some crazy, like hundreds of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency. They hacked an entire cryptocurrency, what's it called?
Server or something?
No, depository. What's the word? Tomo, do you know the word for this?
Nope.
It's like the central bank. I think it's called a repository, a depository. I forget what it's called. They hack it and they hijack all the transactions that are going through, and they stole hundreds of millions of dollars worth. And the Iranians use the same tactics. By the way, the Russians do too. They don't limit themselves to stealing or selling. They'll go as far as to like really hack the banking system to get money from other people, from other countries sometimes, and they do so very, very effectively. Anyway, so all that was to say that sometimes it is incredibly effective to eliminate leadership.
But it doesn't guarantee victory against this organization, especially if it's an ideology like we see that Hamas is.
Yeah, I don't. What's interesting is, and I think this is like a whole different discussion, which is that some organizations, some leaders, when they die, they become almost mythical creatures to their followers, and they forever live on. It immortalizes them. And they become an even stronger character.
Like Arafat.
Yasser Arafat was one like that. You look at Fidel Castro to a certain degree was one like that. You have these leaders that like even when they pass, they're mythical. And there are others that the minute they're gone, it's like a spell is lifted from people in their nation, and they never want to speak their name again. You look at some of the Saddam Hussein, Assad in Syria.
Yeah.
You look at these other leaders where it's like Nasrallah to a certain degree and Hezbollah. It's like we moved on so quickly. I think his death emboldened the people of Lebanon. That's another way to look at it.
To start a new beginning, basically.
To push back against Hezbollah.
Yes.
You look at that, and I feel like his passing. I'm just thinking about this now. His passing was a huge moment for the people of Lebanon. And I think, like in like a Disney film, when like the spell is broken over like a country,
and
the flowers come,
everything is green, and
the green comes back, and the wicked witch is gone, and whatever. But I say this jokingly, but I mean it seriously. Like these people are lifted under the burden of like a terrible leader, a tyrannical leader.
Yeah.
Many times someone who's outlived multiple generations of people that have suffered under him. So that's the reality we're living in. Multiple waves of assassination, sometimes highly effective, sometimes less.
Sometimes not so effective,
and I think you can also look at what's been happening in the Gaza Strip as a symbol of that. And the fact that Hamas leadership is weakened and their grasp and control over the people of the Gaza Strip is weakened, that's maybe part of the root cause of them rebelling to a certain degree against the government, demonstrating against them, speaking publicly against their government.
Mati, you remember the first days of after October 7 of going into the IDF and feeling super tired being a soldier again? It's all, by the way, it's something that happens if you put on the uniform. You start becoming very, very tired as a mentality, because in the army you work a lot and you don't sleep much.
Yeah.
So what did you do in order to wake up during that time?
One, I was very tired.
I remember.
Let's be honest. I feel like I didn't sleep for several months in the beginning of the war. It really was that way. But it's interesting. We were both taking Vinia for me it was several years, I think, before the war.
I think you started even before I joined.
Maybe a year and a half before the war broke out.
Yeah.
And I was taking it for a long time, and the effect of it, even like and I'm not the target audience. I'm a little too young and a little too active or hyperactive, possibly for it to have that strong of an effect. But when I was not resting enough and I wasn't sleeping, and it was hot in the beginning, then really cold afterwards, and I felt like my body was taking a beating, it gave me a crazy energy boost.
Yeah,
I mean,
basically
very
what it
substantial.
does is increases the blood flow to all your organs, if it's the brain, the heart, the lungs, all
Yeah.
your muscles. So it's like gives you a push with your natural system.
Yeah, I felt like it was almost like a superpower in the sense because, it's like this effect where you know how it works, then it works even better.
Yeah.
So we've like done so much content with the Vinia team, and we saw how solid the science behind it is, that the effect of it physically is also like you just know that it's working in the background, and it's helping your blood flow through the body and everything work. And I think it's incredible how effective it is in taking what nature gives us in red grapes and turning it into something that we don't have to, like if you wanted to get the level of antioxidants that Vinia has in it, I think, what was the equation? Like
I think two bottles of red wine.
Yeah,
it's like it's a lot.
If I drink 2 bottles of red wine, I'd be hospitalized.
For one little pill.
Yeah, just to get that level of antioxidants, you can take that. You can actually take a little more if you really want to, unofficially. Anyway, and it's highly effective. The science behind it is ironclad. We're very happy that people have been buying the product because it really works.
Yeah, definitely. So guys, if you want to get Vinia for yourself, it will also help us create more content. So you can go to www.viniatbnisrael.com. Okay? www.viniatbnisrael.com, or you can call the number if you're in the United States, 800-638-1944. Okay? Try it for yourself and let us know how do you feel about it in the comments. Okay? And Mati, I want to shift to what's happening in the Gaza Strip, because Tomer just told me that he did some very, intense research. So there is a plan on the table that the IDF Chief of Staff, the new Eyal Zamir, the new IDF Chief of Staff, presented to the political echelon. It wasn't approved yet, but it includes the IDF taking over all the administrative side of the Gaza Strip, dismantling Hamas, then handing it off to the United States. Is that true, Tomer, or did I get something wrong?
You got it more or less true.
I have a quick response.
Yeah.
It goes like this. Been there, done that, and no thank you. We've already controlled the Gaza Strip, and it wasn't a very effective endeavor, and it was costly, and it was dangerous, and I think everyone with a... Come on, let's be honest here. I don't think that's a good idea.
Katz said...
Israel Katz is the defense minister of Israel.
He said, okay, so what we're replacing with Hamas? We're replacing prisoners. I want to take over the Gaza Strip, and then I have leverage to replace stuff. I will
take the land,
basically
annex parts of Gaza into proper Israel.
Yeah.
Then we can negotiate land for our hostages.
So, I say this half jokingly. I'll tell you what my 9-year-old says about these kind of ideas. He says, well, he can, instead of you, Abba, having to go to reserves, he can send his son to go do that. Because, and again, we're entering a place, and jokes aside, where the number one priority for our country should be reaching a resolution with the Gaza Strip, and I say Gaza Strip and not Hamas.
And not Palestinians necessarily.
Yeah, where the Hamas is pushed out of power. We don't need a military presence in there long term. What we should do is we should make sure that there's a different government that's taking over it, and we should strengthen our borders to prevent that what happened on October 7th from ever happening again. We need to be very careful with that. We're at this, I believe, this very dangerous time where if we don't move swiftly, we'll get stuck in the mud.
Yeah.
If you've ever been off-roading in the mud, as long as you carry momentum, you're good. The minute you stop, you're never getting out of that mud. And we don't need to go back into the mud of military presence long term in the Gaza Strip. There's a very large population there that needs to have a government that is of their people, that isn't Hamas. That should be what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we're talking about half a year of taking the whole Gaza Strip from Hamas, moving Palestinians to Egypt, and dismantling Hamas.
Tomer, there's also a plan, or I don't know if it's rumors or if it's concrete, that Egypt agreed to house Palestinians in the Sinai Peninsula, right?
They just suggested that they will take 1 million Palestinians for a short term of a year in the beginning. But it's all on the table, and nobody reacting. Israel saying right now, we don't going to listen to Hamas. Each time they just taking time and saying yes and no. We pushing on with that.
So basically, the negotiations go on while the fighting goes on. This is the new
Hamas suggested to release 5 hostages, and then Israel said, "No way, we want
all of them
at once, and let's finish with that."
Rightly so.
Yeah, that makes sense, definitely.
Look, there's very, very little trust within Israeli society and government right now in what will Hamas do long term. And who were we talking to the other week that made some very, very smart statements about this? Toma, who were we interviewing last week?
So many people.
It was a lot of people. It was very poignant in the sense.
I think his name was Yair Pinto.
No, it wasn't you.
He was very smart and handsome guy. You know.
No, that doesn't sound right at all. I don't remember who we were talking to, but you say these things as with exclamation points or exclamation marks in the beginning of a sentence. Oh, it's impossible. You must do. You must this. You must that. And it's not true. Gershon Baskin.
Ah, yeah. Wow, that was an interesting.
Very interesting. So, and we were interviewing. He's a master. Was it this week or last week?
This week.
I don't even know what day it is. Anyway, it was this week, and it's been a long week. And he says this very interesting thing. This is airing soon on the YouTube channel. The guy's been in the negotiation room repeatedly since the 90s, and every round with the Palestinians, Hamas, and PA. And he says,
PA is a Palestinian Authority.
Thank you. And he says this. He's like, there were parameters that could have been agreed on. We should have never gone with this, sliver by sliver of the hostages. There should have been a big agreement once where you get everyone back. Because and we know this when we talk about this out loud. It's clear Hamas are not going to give back everyone now. It's clear they're going to draw out as much time as they possibly can. And whatever military campaign you're going to do, let's be honest here, you're not finding every last hostage that way. We've already admitted to that publicly. So what it should be a big, big agreement in which Hamas are pushed to the corner, in which we receive the hostages back to the last hostage, and then we move on from that. And what it takes is, I think the moment that we're in right now, it allows, between U.S. pressure, international community that is still engaged both psychologically and financially and on a military level with what's happening here, the Israeli government that still has the momentum of the war to really do something brave and momentous when it comes to ending the conflict with Hamas as it is right now. And you can deal with the rest afterwards, but there has to be a big agreement that where we remove Hamas from control as they are right now, and secondly, where we get the hostages back.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, I agree.
And a 6-month campaign isn't that. And neither is some this long-term plan. It has to be, as we say in Hebrew, zbeng vegamanu. One big bang and we're done. Both literally and figuratively speaking, by the way.
Yeah, the public is already tired for almost 2 years of war.
Yeah.
The situation is tough in Israel. The situation is tough internationally. We need to push forward fast and strong and end this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree completely. And we're in a place to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, just before we continue to the next part of this show, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the best strategy, to tackle the Hamas terrorists? Would you use, targeted assassinations of the leaders of Hamas, or conducting a ground maneuver into the Gaza Strip? Would you want Israel to conquer Gaza, or are you like Mati says, now I've been there, done that?
By the way, this is
what would you do?
This is not on a figurative level. I have been there.
I know.
And I have done that. And I don't feel like repeating it once more, as have you.
Yeah, I've been in the Rafah border crossing with tanks. About what was it, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that.
I was repeatedly for an extended period. So we look at that and say, look, I'm not saying we're looking for a scenario where there are no wars. That doesn't exist. But we need to be clear and decisive about what the next steps are. And I'd also venture to say that anyone that mails in a suggestion that says go back to war or go something else should add with that a volunteer slip to the Israeli army.
But by the way, many of our viewers do. We get a lot of comments and messages of how can I join the IDF? Maybe we should open a volunteer fighting unit of the IDF. We
should give them a call. By the way, there is an IDF volunteer unit.
I know.
It's just not a combat unit.
No, it's not a combat. It's more helping prepare gear and equipment for the soldiers.
That's meaningful too.
Yeah.
That's meaningful too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
exactly.
So I think we're living in a very, very interesting time. We were talking about this the other week, where it seems like for the last I think month or month and a half, time was moving very slowly for some of the weeks, and then some days it feels like you're doing a year's work in a day, and the war almost stops, and there's just what was it? There was like 2.5 weeks.
Like what's the next step? Nobody's doing it. We're stuck. It feels like you're stuck.
We were
right?
talking about this on like the daily news. I was like, I feel like the script is the same.
From yesterday, yeah.
For days, like it's the same again and again and again. And the reason was because there's so many processes happening in the background that they needed to mature before they could happen.
We just ran from missile 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
To the bomb shelter.
From the Houthis, yeah.
Yeah, so for us, stuff shift really quick and change, so we adapt fast. But I'm really asking, if we want a future, how we can create that? In what way when you have Hamas on your border?
Well, you can't. Hamas should be removed from our borders. Let's start with that. And in general, the only way to have a peaceful neighborhood in the Middle East is to remove the terrorists, which we have a big job to do here.
I think there's a philosophical answer here, if we really think about this for a second, where I think we overstate often the need to solve everything right now. And oftentimes the simplest solution right now is the right solution. And if it's clear that Hamas needs to be removed, then you remove Hamas. You don't negotiate about, you just do what needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the hardest conversation is taking risk in the future, is saying things like, we wish for the people of the Gaza Strip to have a better life than they do today. Mm-hmm. And to do that, we're willing to take the following steps. We're willing to pull in the international community. We're willing to talk to the Qataris. We're willing to do, bilateral negotiations through the Egyptians or through whoever it is to raise up the next level of, or the next generation of leadership in the Gaza Strip that isn't Hamas, but because that's projection of faith and hope into the future. And so it's like we have these weird conversations. I feel like we're only able to talk about what's happening now. No. Let's resolve in full power, full force, and full aggression what's happening right now on the ground. And let's be honest about what we're dealing with. And then at the same time, I pray for this on a daily basis, that our leadership can project into the future something that is of hope and of substance, not just for the Jewish people in this land, for everyone in the neighborhood. And I think that's what everyone deserves. And I want, maybe we end on that. Everyone in this region deserves better than what they have right now. They deserve better than the Iranian octopus of evil that spreads through this region.
Especially the Iranians, yeah.
Especially the Iranian, first and foremost, the Iranian people that suffer from mass public executions and torture and sexual assault by the government and live fire into demonstrations and women being lashed for not wearing a head covering. That happened this week. That's the level of what they're suffering from. They deserve better than Hamas. And they deserve better than Hezbollah, and they deserve better, let's be honest, than Assad in Syria or El Julani currently in Syria.
For sure.
They deserve better than that. They deserve better than having Turkish Air Force bases built on their land in Syria. They deserve better than that. And the way to get to that is when international forces that be talk about, again, which has happened multiple times in the past, talk about how we reshape the future. And it needs to be a brave and honest conversation.
Yeah.
Brave and honest in saying the priority is to give a better life to these people. We're not going to negotiate or contend with the religious extremist. We're going to talk to the people that can do good for their own people. And by doing that, lower the volume of extremism and violence in this region. And there is a possibility for that. There is good in this region. I've seen it firsthand. You have too. We've seen it in Arab countries and Muslim countries around us. Yeah. Repeatedly, there are good people and there are good leaders in those lands. They need a boost versus negotiating with terrorists and people who are trying to build nuclear bombs.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, we have actually a crowd today. We have Aaron, our writer. Aaron, you want to come and say hi, maybe ask a question or share something with the viewers? Aaron knows about this topic, I think, definitely more than me, for sure. Good to see you.
There's no morning.
He's a big part of our team. Aaron, say hi to the viewers.
Hello, everyone. It's a great privilege to be part of the TBN team. I'm glad to be here today. And I do have a question for you guys to think about. I do have a question that for us to think about. Sorry, I'm so tall. I guess I got to just... There we go. My question... Excuse me. Many years ago, there was a really great, famous movie set in this country. It was called... Ben-Hur. And in the movie... there was a line, and it wasn't in the book, which really surprised me when I read the book, but the line was, the way you fight an idea is with another idea. And since Hamas is an idea, and it's been acknowledged that it'll never be completely eradicated as an idea by military force or by economic force, So what kind of idea do you think that we can come up with to try to push back against the Hamas idea, which is also the Muslim Brotherhood idea? It's also the Shiite Ayatollah regime in Iran's idea. All these ideas. Is there an idea that we can push back against?
First of all, I love that question. Really love that question. It indicates that you've thought a lot about this topic. And I'd say yes, like in the end, we live in a world that is dictated and controlled by the narratives that people use about themselves. And our people, when we're having a good day and a good season, we talk about being a force set in this land to promote God's plan and promise for this country and this region. And that is a plan of prosperity. If you look at the biblical narrative is the restoration of all to God's original creation. That is peace and justice to mankind, peace and justice to people, and specifically to the weakest elements of society. That's godly justice in this region. And the opposing idea, the diametrically opposed idea to that, is radical Islam. And it's a religion that brings only things that start with the letter D. Death, destruction, devastation,
unalive, unbuilding, unconstruction, basically everything negative.
Death, destruction, and devastation to the people of this region. Look at what radical Islam promoted by the Iranians has done to this region. Look at what it's done. It's destabilized and ruined the economy and the people of Yemen, of Iran. It's set them back 2 generations when it comes to economic growth. They've destroyed generations of just quality of life for the people of Lebanon, for Syrian people, for Iraqi people, for the people of Hamas-controlled Gaza Strip. That is what their religion and their faith and ideology brings. So we are opposed ideas, and if you really boil it down, maybe this is where you're going, Aaron, really boil it down, is it God's plan and people, or what's opposed to God and God's plan? That's really the bottom line of everything. And God's plan is for the restoration of all. That's in the Old Testament, it's in the New Testament. The restoration of all to God's original justice in this land, to this people, and by extension to everyone in the region. And he says this, and I'll stop preaching in 1 second. He says, I will do this so they will know that I am the God of these people. Not just that they're violent and can fight a war, but that God has blessed them in a way that will be seen by others. And my prayer is that the idea of that blessing extends to the nations around us, that they take part in it. And I believe there's an inheritance also to the people, to the sons of Ishmael, and not just the sons of Jacob, and not just sons of Isaac. It's the sons of the both peoples have an inheritance that is positive, but it requires brave leadership, and it requires a narrative that extends beyond like a 30-day horizon.
And I would just add, that's kind of what we mean when we say pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Yeah,
that's what we're praying for. That peace that can only come when everything is in alignment with God's plan for this city and for this region and for this planet, for the human race.
Amen to that.
Yep. All right, thanks so much.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah.
So guys, this is just one member of our team, Aaron. We have a big team that helps us grow, create content. Yeah. I mean, takes a lot of job.
Without them, Yair and I can barely tie our shoes in the morning.
Yeah, by the way, they make us look very, very good. So thank you so much.
I'm waking up Aaron every morning around 6, 7 o'clock.
Yeah. So basically, when you pray for us, for our team, make sure to pray for the entire team of the TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. Each member does an amazing job. And because of it, we're able to create more than 30 videos a month to share what's happening here.
Yeah, we've just increased the number of videos we released.
Yeah, we moved into doing live question and answers and other programs. Yeah. So,
one last thing.
Yeah.
If anyone has lasted this long in the podcast and they haven't yet
subscribed,
First of all, what are you even doing here? Secondly, hey guys, pause the video one last time if you're here and go to the bottom of the video, press the like, the share, and the subscribe, and get this message out to more people. And for all the, 48% who have subscribed, or 52%, whatever it is, let's say give or take half of the people that have subscribed, thank you for subscribing. We value the partnership of everyone who watches this content, and it really, really keeps us going to know that people are touched by the content and blessed by what comes out of Jerusalem.
Exactly. Thank you, Mati.
Thank you, Yair.
Thank you for watching. Please click that subscribe button if Mati didn't say that clear enough. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and see you again next time.
Bye.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today.